In Minnesota, the Democratic Party now controls both chambers of the state's legislature. And so Governor Tim Walz'll is asking his fellow Democrats to, quote, think big when it comes to voting issues and other reforms the party is hoping to put into action. And so joining us now, Democratic Governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz'll. Governor, it's an exciting time for Democrats in Minnesota. First time in 8 years you've controlled both chambers. So how do you plan to use this new power?
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for having us. I think we're going to use it to improve the lives of Minnesotans. They spoke very clearly in this election. One of the things here we're very proud of in Minnesota is we rank at or near the top in voter turnout in every election, and protecting that access to the ballot with, automatic voter registration, pre-registration for our 16 and 17-year-olds, felon restoration of voting rights, and then finally being able to use some of the federal money. We've been stopped by Republicans in the Senate from using the HAVA money, the Help America Vote Acts, and so I think moving to protect that ballot and then moving on to things that people saw are under threat, reproductive rights, abortion access for women. And then we're going to make historic investments in education to make this the best state in the country to raise your family and have a child. So those are things that I think folks spoke clearly about. And it's not about Democrats having power and doing whatever we want. It's moving things forward that people asked for that have been stalled. So it is an exciting time.
Governor, the headline of the New York Times article says that Democrats are going on the offensive with voting rights in Wisconsin. How specifically do you plan to go on the offensive?
Yeah, and I think you see this, as I said, Minnesota has a long tradition, bipartisan tradition, by the way. We don't fear the voters. They vote, and however they vote, we respect that. We've seen this attack on voting rights, attack on our elections, have an incredible Secretary of State in Steve Simon that keeps Minnesota as safe, fair elections. So we need to make sure, as we see across the country, rolling back of this, states around us, making it difficult for people to get water while they're voting. It's ridiculous to people here. So I think, again, we have same-day registration, but we need to pre-register. Everybody's there. We need to make sure that it's easy to vote. We need to make sure we have more access, as I said, using some of those federal dollars in our state surplus to make sure that we have plenty of voting places for people to vote. And we know that vote by mail is secure and safe. And when you're in a state like Minnesota, the weather's unpredictable, as we've seen across the country. Just things to expand access to the ballot, letting people vote. And however they choose to vote, that is their right to do. But this idea of we're seeing across, in other states where there's this attempt to make it more difficult to vote. In Minnesota, we want to make it as easy as possible. We know our elections are safe, secure, and fair, and we're going to lean into that, codify that, and put up a firewall, because this attack on voting rights is attack on the basic core of democracy, and it needs to end.
I absolutely agree with you, Governor Walz'll. This is Eddie Glaude, and you say you want folks to go big. Now, what is the lesson you're sending to the national party? We know that voting rights is stalled in the House of Representatives. The John Voting Rights Act haven't been able to do much with that. So what are you saying to the national party leaders as you go big in Minnesota around the voting rights issue?
Yeah, and I say that I had the privilege of serving for a dozen years in Congress with John Lewis, and many conversations about this. Went with John to Selma and listened to some of those things and understanding. This is a critical time in our nation's history, and we've watched people erode that basic right. I think now, if we can't get it federally, states need to take the lead. We saw that with the decision on Roe. I don't think the Supreme Court is done. And I think now we have an opportunity with folks who care about the democracy, care about access to abortion, care about public schools, care about union organizing. We need to use this as an opportunity. If there's any things Republicans have taught me, we have a slim majority here in the Senate, but Republicans always told me a one-vote majority is a majority. And that's what I'm saying now is Democrats who care about this. And this isn't about, we're going to make this state more hospitable for people to come here and teach if they want to come and teach, to start businesses. We have a strong business climate. This isn't about some strange ideology that we have. These are basic American tenets of access to the vote, access to public education, access to make your own healthcare decisions. And I just think for us to, I'm come from a rural district that I served in Congress. I'm willing to compromise. I'm not going to compromise on the ballot. I'm not going to compromise on women's rights. I'm not going to compromise on public schools. And I think we need to understand that the states are going to be at the forefront of that. I'm really excited that my good friend Gretchen Whitmer is in the same situation we are, because we've seen this in states where we have incredible governors like Tony Evers in Wisconsin. They have to fight against some of the most basic things. So my message nationally is is that the vast majority of people agree with this. We always scratch our heads. People know that we need to do something around safe gun legislation. It pulls out the roof, yet nothing happens. I think states, when they're in an opportunity to make a change, need to go bold.
Yeah, Mr. Governor, actually was going to go on that very topic. Democrats wanted to go big on the idea of gun safety. And your state touched by this just a few days ago. The Mall of America, the famous mall there in Minnesota. Yes. 5 people were arrested in the fatal shooting there that sent the mall, the nation's largest, into lockdown for hours on the eve of the holiday. In fact, members of the New York Giants were there and had to shelter in place for a few hours. What more can be done on guns, both at the state and federal level?
Yeah, I was in the very store yesterday with my 2 children, 21 and 16, and they're talking about it, how outrageous it is. Look, I served 24 years in the military. I have fired these weapons. I know when there's a place for them, and it's the battlefield. I'm also a lifelong hunter. I'm a pheasant hunter. It's my thing. I grew up doing it. It's cultural, and it's all of that. The common sense things that we're talking about, whether it is making sure that we're doing good background checks, making sure that we have red flag laws, those things don't impede your lawful right to own firearms, but there are too many guns on the street. When we have 18 and 17-year-olds with illegal firearms on the streets, strengthening penalties around straw purchasers, we need to recognize these types of things don't happen in the same numbers they do elsewhere, and people have the freedoms to do things in other countries. We need to get this fixed. And again, I come from a rural area. I come from a culture, as I said, of hunting and serving in the military. There is absolutely no argument to be made that you need these weapons of war and that there shouldn't be restrictions against them. Again, we make it difficult for an 18-year-old to register to vote, but they can buy an AR with no background check in some cases. It's ridiculous. So I agree with you. Minnesota's we're not immune to this. It shakes us. We, again, are traditionally a very safe state, but we've seen a rise in violence, especially gun violence. And again, we're going to put money into the things that stop this from happening. But I get, it's irritating to me when I hear Republicans say, well, it's a mental health issue or something like that. We have a lot of issues dealing with mental health, but many of those people are not violent. It's a gun problem, and we need to figure that out.